for those of you who don't know me, I'm Courtney. I'm one part of the Inner Loop, and Rach.
I'm Rachel. I'm the other part.
And there's Kira there somewhere. She's also.
Oh, Courtney's laptop strikes again. It's basically the worst for podcast recording. Courtney's always freezing. We should start a GoFundMe for Courtney's new laptop.
Wait, can you hear me now? I'm back.
Yes.
That was a really good joke. I'm trying to put it off like many other things until grad school.
Not putting it off. It's ruining everything.
I'm putting off buying a new car. I'm putting off buying a new computer. Any large purchases are going to be post PhD, if that ever happens. So here we are.
Post PhD exists in the future.
That's right.
Anyway, let's get back on track.
If I bug out again,
we have announcements. We have things to say, right?
Well, we usually do.
Okay. So the podcast is going. I apologize to any loyal listeners. I'm super, super busy, so they're not coming out on time, but they are coming out usually twice a month. It's called the Inner Loop Radio. It's available on iTunes and all the podcast sites, and sometimes on YouTube. Yeah, that's our lives right now, but that's okay. There's lots of really good content on the podcast, and we talked to Lauren Francis Schwarma about research and fiction, and we talked to all our Authors Corner authors about things relevant to their books. And speaking of Authors Corner, if you don't know, we started an Authors Corner campaign, which is a multi-platform publicity campaign for authors who publish books with small to medium-sized press, because they normally don't have their own publicity team. We're sort of acting as that for them. So they have their own dedicated spot at Potter's House in Adams Morgan, which is a bookstore. You should buy books from there. And we feature them on our website, on our YouTube channel, and at our readings. So tonight, we will have our September Authors Corner reader spotlight right after intermission, and that's Courtney LeBlanc. So you should check it out. I'll throw a link in the chat. And we're really, really excited about it. The other part of the campaign is that we set up an Eat, Drink, Read program with 3 restaurants in the city. So they put a little excerpt of the author's work in with all the takeout orders and menus. So really getting the work out there, and everybody in DC is seeing it. Anybody who goes to Shaw's Tavern, Revelers Hour, and Pie Shop DC gets a little taste of those Authors Corner books each month. So it's very cool. Check it out, theinnerlooplit.org. is our website. Again, I'll put a link in the chat. So I covered radio and Authors Corner. Courtney, you want to talk about the residency?
Absolutely.
Also particularly relevant.
While you were chatting, Rach, I put the link in there. And I'll take this moment also to encourage you all to use the chat. We've been doing that at these virtual events, and it's been really fun to, engage with each other in real time that way. So feel free to comment on each other's work. Ooh and ah, say, yes, I love that. Make jokes, send pictures of your dogs, whatever you want to do. It just helps us to pretend we're all together again. But yes, the other thing we are excited about this evening is we have our summer residents. We'll be sharing some work from their experiences this summer at the Woodlawn and Pope Leahy House and Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture, where we hosted, my goodness, did we have 5 of you this year? I think we did. It was pretty incredible. And the residents are on site for 1 week at a time, exploring the space, the place, the history, the time, learning about the past, thinking about the future. What does it mean to, what do places with histories that are problematic mean today? And how can we as writers writers try to shed light on some of the issues that surround those places. Saunders Eating Plant. But this is our 6th year hosting the residency program, and it's just been a joy to really see the different perspectives that writers have brought over the years to the space and to us. So we will hear from our 2021 summer writers in residence tonight also. Thinking if I have any other announcements. I don't think so.
That's it.
I think that's the big stuff.
That's stuff.
We will be harassing everyone at some point, and by harassing, I mean lovingly reaching out to you to talk about a fundraising event toward the end of the year. So stay tuned for more info about that. And it's super secret because it's not planned yet. But it's on my list. Anyway, the other big announcement we have, obviously, is that we're thrilled to have Cutter Wood join us this evening as our featured reader. He and we had hoped, like all of us, I think, that we would be in person at this point, but many of our venues are still struggling, and it's been tough. Even with safety factors in place, it's been tough to support the industry or for them to extend beyond what they're able to operate on right now. So thank you, Cutter, for joining us in this virtual space. We really appreciate it. I would like to introduce him. Cutter Wood was born in Central Pennsylvania and received his BA from Brown University, where he was awarded prizes for nonfiction and poetry. He completed an MFA in creative nonfiction at the University of Iowa in 2010. His work has appeared in Harper's, Virginia Quarterly Review, the Paris Review Daily, and other publications. And he's been awarded fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Bread Loaf Writers Conference. And he was the 2020-2021 Jenny McKean Moore Writer in Residence at the George Washington University, which I'm excited about because I'm also a GW person. And that's just such a great program, and we're glad that it's back. And Cutter's work has been described as bold, rapturous, and heartbreaking, and remarkably tender and haunting. So we are looking forward to hearing it. Cutter, take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Courtney. And let me just say thank you to Courtney and Rachel too, and everybody else there at the Inner Loop for doing all of this. I know what pain in the ass it is, and I appreciate it. You know, I feel like the last while has really made me realize how vital this is, the whole experience of being a writer, being able to get together with other people, read, write, talk. Turns out without that, it's just a lot of sitting at your desk. So, so I love this stuff, and I'm very excited for it to come back to be in person and for all of us to actually be looking at each other in the face. Okay. I should also say on that note that while I was technically the writer in residence at GW last year, I don't think I ever set foot at GW or in DC. So it was one of the stranger writer in residencies you can imagine. But I was there in spirit, and I'm excited to be here in spirit tonight again. All right. What am I going to read? I'm going to do something that I have not done in a long time and read you all something totally new. I mean, new as can be. I am really working to meet a book deadline, and this is one of my final bits that needs to fall into place. And it turns out, you know, Netflix, those bastards, just came out with an episode about this weird drug and this weird religion based around that drug. The drug is called Ayahuasca. But before that, I decided I was going to write about this. So that's what you're going to hear tonight. And it's part of this bigger book project, which is all about every chapter is like its own thing about one of the materials the human body sheds. So there's a chapter about tears, a chapter about urine, and this is the chapter about vomit. For those of you who don't know much about ayahuasca, it is an extremely potent psychedelic, the main feature of which is that you vomit a ton. By the way, Courtney, Rachel, am I allowed to swear? This is a little late to have asked.
Yes.
Okay.
We hear it all the time.
I didn't see any children on the Zoom. So yeah.
One day we'll tell you a story about a child and a reading.
All right. I look forward to it. Well, I'm glad they're not on this reading. So this is very simply called I Did the Hardest Thing in My Life in a Porta-John in Orlando. And it's not as funny maybe as that title makes it sound. It was dark stuff. All right. Can everybody, by the way, can you all hear me all right? All good? Yeah, cool. So, on a spiritual map, Soul Quest, Ayahuasca, Church of Mother Earth, sits firmly at the nexus of our world and several less burdened dimensions. But on this plane, it's located about 20 minutes east of downtown Orlando, on a long, skinny parcel of live oaks and cabbage palms between a martial arts academy and an auto body shop. The conventional way to arrive is by automobile, usually a taxi from the airport, though occasionally people make the long haul down from Georgia or Alabama in their SUV and park behind the horse gate in the lot out back. Despite the church's lack of attachment to the usual terrestrial expectations, it is not a fly-by-night sort of affair. There's a tent in the back where Sean, a beefy medic with a silver buzz cut, takes temps and blood pressures and verifies that new arrivals have had a negative COVID test within the last 72 hours. And someone in the organization knows their way around Microsoft Word. In the front office, there are printed name tags with the church logo and designations as to the wearer's role and lodging details. While they do not charge for the sacrament itself, a bitter psychedelic liquid made from the leaves of the ayahuasca vine, they are forced to collect a donation for meals, for accommodation, and for the work of accompaniment and supervision. To facilitate the transfer of this lucre, the church is connected to the usual payment channels. They accept Visa and MasterCard, even if they occasionally mix up the files and inadvertently schedule you for the extra ayahuasca ceremony on Saturday afternoon. I spent some time in mid-September as a member of this church. Along with 85 or so other souls, I swiped my credit card, accepted the sacrament, and embarked on a journey. I have no doubt that some of my fellow travelers found a measure of relief on the grounds of the church. I only know that my single strongest conviction, as I crept out under the locked horse gate, was that I would never, not in a million celestial lifetimes, set foot again on that property. I feel driven to account for that misguided weekend because I am someone who failed to transcend. My ego was not burned from my bones. I met no earthen goddesses. I vomited no endlessly coiled snake. I write this because I did not make it to the other side, and some did, and they're no longer around to give an accounting. Even now, hurtling north on the Amtrak Silver Meteor, separated from the retreat by little more than a handful of hours and 60 miles of steel, I cannot recall the exact shifting in my perspective that occurred over the course of the weekend, or how precisely I found myself, ant-bitten and half-conscious, being evacuated by stretcher from a grove of oaks out back of a compound in Florida. When exactly did Kyle start to seize? And was it before or after my hands grew 2 sizes? Some answers only get harder to grasp. Someone made the decision to join that church, and someone writes these words now. But I'm unclear what precisely separates those two people. And this uncertainty gives the process of composition a disconcerting and unhelmed quality. I can say only one thing with any certainty. And I mention this in the hope of sufficiently inculpating myself in what turned out to be the single worst decision of my entire life. I can say only one thing. In retrospect, there were a great many hints. The impetus to self-improvement is a common one. just about as common as its abandonment. I am no stranger to it. There's a pair of dumbbells under my bed, a book on how to wire a home for electricity on my desk. There's floss in the bathroom vanity, and a copy of 501 Spanish Verbs on the bookshelf. These are the necessary accoutrements of a me who has not quite seemed capable of mustering up his own existence. I've spent several weeks doing the 7-minute workout, or making kombucha, or practicing the subjunctive of ser. And from time to time, I have glimpsed that better version of myself. More patient, more joyful, with a deeper laugh, better hair. Then one day, abruptly, the vision vanishes. I did not sign up to drink ayahuasca for the purposes of self-improvement. But it's worth mentioning at the outset that I am at least one who has, from time to time, considered his own state and thought it could be better. I came up with the idea of drinking ayahuasca on a whim. I don't know where I'd first heard of this stuff. I'd been researching and writing about vomit, and one morning, as I woke up, I seemed to remember a mention in some article of a syncretic Amazonian religion, a mixture of Catholicism and an indigenous religion, whose sacrament was both a physical and a spiritual emetic. I got my pillows in place, put on my glasses, opened up my laptop, and Googled ayahuasca. Then I texted the strangest person I know. If you see this in the text, I've got the text exchange there. Thursday, 9:28 a.m. Want to do an ayahuasca retreat in Orlando? I need to do some puke research. Thursday, 9:28 a.m. When? I'll talk more about him later, but it may be that text exchange is the only thing you really didn't know about Jesse Butterfield. He is that kind of dude. The whole scheme, meanwhile, was always going to be a hard sell with my wife. In certain respects, licensed in the state of Iowa to instruct yoga, occasionally listens to fish of her own volition. She's got way more hippie vibes than I do. But she's also got this uncanny taste for equilibrium. Given the choice between a weekend of vomitous psychic exploration and buying a couch, she'll go couch every time. Whatever the opposite of stoked is in the lexicon of psychedelia, that was Erin's general feeling about this whole endeavor. We were in the living room when I pitched her on the idea, and the place where the couch would have been if we had a couch. Erin has a knack for words when she's trying to make a point. She looked at me and summed up all her reservations in a single question. Exactly what are you trying to accomplish? It's a solid question. On the surface, I'd been asked to write about vomit, and I'd found a way to do it that justified spending close to $900 tax-deductible dollars on drugs, though again, technically the drugs were free. A person doesn't generally get that kind of opportunity. But I recognized that line of logic would not carry weight with Erin, should probably not even be mentioned to her. And moreover, I recognized that she was right. That wasn't a good reason, though I wouldn't share that with her either. Many people find their way to ayahuasca because they hope to overcome some physical or mental trauma. But my health and emotions were generally in pretty good shape. Not much traumatic experience under my belt besides the usual collection: a crashed car, a couple of buried dogs, and a handful of human funerals. I was in good health too, with the exception, entirely writing-induced, of steadily worsening vision in my left eye. Other than some low-level daily stress largely related to the pressures of trying to make a living while managing the emotive whims of a toddler, I was pretty satisfied with my existence. I was, as Erin, buttering me up, told me later that week, the most psychologically resilient person she knew, sometimes annoyingly so. But I wasn't interested in healing. I didn't want to commune with the Earth Mother. I was interested in throwing up. Ayahuasca is a strange drug. It's not like popping a Xanax or an Adderall. It's not like eating mushrooms or knocking back a case of beer. There's nothing recreational about it. Ayahuasca's whole thing is that it makes you puke. And having set out to write about vomit, I thought I should experience the mother of all puking. The sacrament was reputed to induce not merely intense physical vomiting, but also a kind of puking beyond puking, a sensation of puking from the soul itself. I didn't expect to be healed or remade or become a better person. I just wanted to see what this brain of mine would vomit up. It was sentiments like these, more delicately worded, that I expressed to my wife little by little over the course of several days in July, during that period when my money was still refundable. And little by little, she warmed to the idea, or rather, she resigned herself to it, inaction being a strength we both share. So it's 3 days. Yep. And Butterfield is going. Yep. She let out a deep, couchless sigh. It's only Orlando, I said. Orlando? You can't just do your drugs here in Baltimore like everybody else? You have to go to Orlando? And how about I stop there?
No!
Cutter, you should check out the chat. There was lots of responses in there.
Oh, good. Yeah, I can't really see you guys while I'm reading in Microsoft Word, so it's hard to get a feel.
Yeah,
I'm glad to see it.
Yeah, definitely go back and look at the chat.
Nice.
Yeah, super engaged. Also
Just,
super interested in this subject. I really want to write about it too, just the idea of needing to expand yourself. But I like this perspective that you're really just interested in puke. So
don't do it. Don't do it. I'm here to tell you. I'm going to cut to the chase. Don't do it.
You to puke is what I want to know. Who was saying you to puke?
Actually, my sister did the ayahuasca ceremony.
She did it?
I dated a guy who was really into it.
Yep. Already done.
I like that that's a past tense, dated.
Yeah. So good. Okay.
All right. I'll hand it over. Thank you.
So Courtney, did you share the
Oh, I did not drop it in the chat. I will do that.
Sorry, that's how I was planning to get it. Awesome. So thank you so much, Cutter. I'm gonna unpin you if I can find you. And next up we have our residents. Is that right, Court?
Yes, everyone's kind of mixed in tonight actually, but first up we are going to hear from Anna Tipton.
Okay. Anna, where are you at? There you are. Oh, you're on mute.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you. I want to say thank you to Courtney and Rachel and to Kira, and also to the people at Woodlawn for supporting my work and also for this opportunity. I know a lot of work and hustle goes on behind the scenes that we don't see, so thank you for that. I especially enjoyed my time at Arcadia Farm, and this poem arose from reflecting on that. This is on the 7th year, a Sabbath. On the unfallowed ground, between the vine and the olive, the wild animal wanders, starved. If out of the soil, the hand took only enough for today, restrained, not taking all that it can, sweating with trust, this groaning, unaerated clay might heal from disease, and the animal would look back on pastures wide open for breath, grateful for the fruit of their labor. Thank you.
It's beautiful, Anna. Thank you.
Okay, next in nonfiction, we have Chelsea Harrison.
Actually, we're making an adjustment to the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get updated. Sorry. Go ahead, Court.
Yep, it's going to be nonfiction / poetry, and we have Monica Romo.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you everybody who made this possible. I just have a short poem to share, but I feel like it needs so much prefacing because it's based on so many of the things that I saw when I was looking through the archives and when I was walking around the grounds. And I guess just as a way of kind of introducing you to what my week was like there, I wrote this kind of based on a lot of the very meticulous preservation methods of like fruits and meats that I found in Nellie's compilation, especially having to do with salt. And I got really interested in the way that salt and fruit and things were preserved, but people's stories weren't always preserved at Woodlawn. And there are also a few tomato preservation instructions that I kind of reference here. I read something about the history of the usage of tomatoes in the antebellum South and how they were called love apples because of a mistranslation from the Italian. They used to be called that in Great Britain. Yeah, there was just so much there. And so I borrowed a lot of that in my writing. And so what I'm about to read is kind of about Woodlawn and the development of the land there in contrast with the Pope Leahy House's kind of construction. And also it has to do with the first time the residents met, we found a salt, pepper, and flour shaker in the Pope Leahy house, and we had a little conversation about that. And so that's also what I was drawing on. Okay. In a strange rebalancing of priorities, to sweeten, to spice, or to make last, I see flour interrupting salt and pepper in the everyman's home. A century earlier, at the mansion next door, the mistress sprinkles salt by the pound to enact preservation of her slaughtered pigs and to keep summer sweetness in her broken bag of winter bones, jams, tomato, peach. In a house that grows from still unclean hands, brought up by bricks and boards obeying the land, by an architect who tended far more earth through engineering than Virginia plantation owners ever had. We sprinkle flour, not to preserve, but loosen. We keep a small amount on hand, enough, so that our dough does not stick to the foundation it must rise from, and so that it does not adhere to, as if embracing, a great white oak that shades the house, which is to say, so that it does not wrap around the rolling pin that bears down to flatten it. We sprinkle our dough with flour so that it remains tender, always to be molded by trying hands, so that we can take its shape whole, leave, separate. In the 21st century, we have thrown away our salt. Preservation is something new. To make the histories leavening and the heat endure, the best thing to do is sprinkle not salt, but water, not to stop time, not to preserve a tomato in its moment of love, but to grow it. Thank you.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Monica. You'll see that people were hurriedly writing every line into the chat to say that they loved it. So that's how you know you have a good poem. And just so everybody knows, both Monica and Anna were part of our summer residency program. So that's part of the inspiration, and we'll hear from more of them throughout the program. But first, next up in fiction is George Pendle.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here. It's my first time, and can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yes, we can hear you great. Thank you,
Okay.
George.
We were just trying to find you to spotlight you.
Well, this was, I'm afraid this is a piece of pandemic lockdown fiction, so I apologize.
No apologies.
But I was trying to, out of the malaise of earlier this year, I was trying to come up with something concise and fairly short, and this is what I came up with. It's a piece called Stuck in the Middle with You. We were alone. Of course we were. Alone like 8 million other people in London. But to tell the truth, I liked it. It was cozy and still. There was the flump of the post on the carpet in the morning, and then the silence, the long, delicious silence until the kids crawled into bed with me. Emma was 5 at the time. Mum, she'd say, Mum, why is it so quiet? And I'd say, because everybody's hiding. And she'd say, well, what are they hiding from? And I'd say, from the Bugglezoids and the creepy cornies and the snuggle jams and the beast gombles. And I'd tickle her and she'd scream. And then Abby would totter over and grab my leg and she'd scream because we were screaming. Abby was just 2, a little sack of chub, barely able to walk in a straight line without falling over. And when she did fall over, she always looked so surprised. Every time it was like, what just happened? Who did this to me? I demand an inquiry. Anyway, we passed the time playing games and doing little activities and things like that. Our favorite was sizzing. That's what Emma called it. I'd get my fabric scissors out and we'd make little clothes for the girls' toys out of my old t-shirts. A bandana for Teddy or a gown for one of the stuffed monkeys. Then there'd be a fashion show. Mummy Mountain was a favorite game too. I'd prop myself up against the sofa and the girls would try and climb me, except there'd be an earthquake as they got halfway and my legs would start to shake, and then they'd yell and tumble, head down, bottom up, an avalanche of limbs pouring onto the floor. And then they'd pull themselves together and start the whole thing over again. Until Dan shouted at us. Yeah, there was Dan too. He'd been laid off and was home all day now, just fuming. He was angry at the best of times, and these weren't the best of times. I'd say, come and join us. You can be Daddy Mountain. But he'd say, I don't want to be Daddy Mountain. I want to be out. And I'd say, I never saw a man who looked with such a wistful eye upon that little tent of blue we prisoners call the sky. And he'd say, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'd say quietly, everyone wants to be out, Dan. And he'd say, fuck off. No, Dan didn't like being inside. He paced back and forth, back and forth. Have you ever lived with a pacer? It's awful. Our house was too small anyway, and there was too much stuff in the way, shoes, Legos, kids. Dan would pace, and if he trod on a toy, he'd scream blue murder. And if he wasn't pacing, he'd be drinking. It got to him starting at 9 in the morning when I barely had my second cup of tea. Anyway, I remember one time a few weeks in, he was watching the morning TV. The news people were talking about spikes in Italy or France. And when I went to ask him if he'd like a piece of toast, he spun round like I'd knifed him. I am watching TV. He had that bug-eyed look he got when he'd been at it. All right, I'd say, trying to keep it light. Keep your hair on. Whoops, too late. He was bald, you see. But he jumped up and pushed me against the wall and said, I swear if I stay in here much longer, I'm going to kill you. And I said, but it's 10 o'clock in the morning, Dan. You can't kill someone before lunch. No one does that. Wait until tea time. And then he hit me right across the nose, Mike Tyson like, whap. I don't know why I said it, but it's true. It does seem wrong to murder someone in the morning. It's always in the evening or at night that dog deeds get done. At least it is on TV. It wasn't the first time he'd hit me, not by far, but it was the earliest time. He'd usually come at me late at night, all leery and pissed, and that's when I'd jump around trying to hush him, trying not to wake the kids, and trying not to get hit. He'd chase me around the flat, and eventually I'd dive under the bed like we were playing hide and seek. He couldn't get me under the bed. Sure, he'd kick and try and grab my ankles. Once he even got the bread knife and jabbed it at me. Good old bread knife, maker of sandwiches, turned against me, but by and large I got off with only a few cuts and bruises, and he'd eventually tire himself out and then fall asleep on top of the bed. And there would be, what a picture, him red-faced and snoring on top and me all scratched up and blubbering underneath. It's funny the way kids think monsters live under the bed. For me, it's always been the other way round. One morning, me and the girls were making a dress for Abby's big purple dinosaur when Dan came in and stared at me with that look of his. I know what you're thinking, I said. I know, but the Jurassic period was actually much more open-minded than you'd imagine. Dan didn't laugh. He just turned redder and redder. That's my fucking t-shirt, he shouted. Bad words, I said, and Abby put her hands over her ears. I looked down, and it was true, it was. His favorite blue t-shirt. How did that happen? Well, he came and grabbed me by the hair and pulled me up off the ground, and I was hurting so bad I couldn't say anything, and the kids were screaming because I was screaming, and he was winding up to punch me, and I thought, oh, Helen, this might just be it. When I felt the scissors warm and still in my hand, and I just kind of reached out and pushed them into him like he was a door and they were the key. And he made the exact same face Abby does when she falls over. And then he fell over and he didn't look much like Abby anymore. And Emma said, "You seized him, Mum." And I took the kids out of the house and into the street, and it was totally empty. And I didn't know what to do. And then I heard the bells of the church chiming, and I counted them, and it was 11 o'clock. And I thought, "Helen, you fool. Nobody kills anyone before lunch."
That took an insane turn. I feel like, oh, that was cathartic to write. I don't know if you actually have children, but that was perfection. Thanks so much. So Courtney, I think that if it's okay with everyone, we're gonna skip intermission and just drive right along because we're a little small, intimate group and we should just all hear each other and then go about to our evenings. Great. Okay, so our next reader is our Inner Loop Authors Corner Spotlight, Courtney LeBlanc. Her latest collection, Exquisite Bloody Beating Heart, was published by her very own small press, Right in Your Throat. And she's an amazing poet. We're so thrilled and privileged to have her be a part of the Authors Corner program. And we will hear from her now.
Thank you. Tonight has been so goddamn good, y'all. And I just had knee surgery, so I'm stuck on my couch. I'm 2 weeks into a 6-week on crutches time period, so I'm literally living in one room of my house. So this makes me feel like I'm escaping a little bit, so it's been needed. I'm gonna read 3 poems from my new book. The first one is titled Love Poem to My Scoliosis. Oh crooked spine, oh curved skeletal frame, you grew an extra vertebra and curved to the left, refused gravity's downward pull. You send me to the ER annually, seeking syringes filled with drugs to stop your frantic spasms, the grip you know only to tighten. Gave yourself a pretty name, scoliosis, and caused me to cry when you were discovered at 16. Too late to correct, too late to stop your sideways march. Oh, compressed spinal cord, you send messages to my fingertips, electric and tingling. You hold one hip higher, pull the same shoulder down, attempting a tango between body parts, the muscles in the middle stuck in a crushing embrace. The knobs of my spine turn to the left, a lopsided ladder for my lover's hands to climb. And how you bend out half my ribs, while crushing the other side, the wide breath I pull in to fill you, to ease me through the stiffness and ache you bring me most days. Oh, twisted bones, oh, curved frame, I call you beloved, I call you beautiful, I call you mine. The next poem is titled How to Run. Pre-injury, I was a big runner. This surgery will get me back to running eventually. I tore my meniscus right off the bone. I don't recommend it. It's not a lot of fun. So this will be my own guide to return to running when I get permission to. It's called How to Run. Lace up your shoes. Put one foot in front of the other. Repeat until his name is no longer circling in your mind, until all you hear and think and breathe is your footfall, gentle against the pavement. Invest in good shoes, sweat-wicking clothes, and a quality sports bra. Trust me, it's worth the cost. When it's raining, wear a visor to keep your vision clear. You'll still need to log your miles. If you don't, you'll curl up on the couch, phone in your hand, scrolling through pictures of him. You'll want to call him, so run an extra mile instead. Run until you're soaked through, shoes sloshing with every step, but you're no longer tempted to hear his voice. Wake with the sunrise. Watch the sky lighten as you crest a hill, your gait easier than it's been in weeks. Run faster. Push your pace until your legs quake and every atom aches from something that isn't his touch. Sleep hard every night, your body wonderfully exhausted. Dream of the hills you will tackle the next morning. Wake rested and ready, your body craving movement, your mind clear and unencumbered by any thoughts other than today's route. Lace up your shoes. Put one foot in front of the other. Repeat. And the last one I'm going to read It's the last poem in the book, and it's where the title of the collection comes from. The title of the poem was eventually Evolution. Remember, we didn't start like this. We didn't always have these mostly hairless bodies, didn't walk upright, didn't love with such ferocity. These things took millennia to develop. From amoeba to boneless invertebrate, jellyfish or mollusk, to fish with legs that eventually pushed itself up onto land and walked through pure effort and a million years of slowly evolving. Eventually, it got bigger, grew fur, pushed past monkeys into some early Neanderthal version of a human. Not very smart and quite ugly. Eventually, we figured out fire and the wheel and hand tools, and the earth kept circling the sun, and the land broke apart and drifted into the continents we more or less have today. Humans started wearing pants, and we went to the moon, and we dropped LSD and bombs on other countries, and eventually I met you, and the muscle in my chest, which took millennia to evolve into this exquisite, bloody, beating heart, found you, and I knew this is exactly what we'd been aiming for from the very beginning. Thank you.
Courtney, I've never heard you read the title poem.
It's time then.
Yeah.
That was such a treat. Thanks, Courtney. Next in nonfiction is Jessica Rapisarda. There we go.
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to thank everybody at the Inner Loop and at the Woodlawn and Pope Leahy houses. I'm a parent and a teacher, and having that time to myself to write was really invaluable, and I learned so much just about the estate, about our history, and about myself as a writer, frankly. So what I'd like to read tonight are actually two pieces that are both pretty short. And I need to state from the outset, there's like a weird coincidence, I feel like, that might be happening, because at the beginning, Cutter was saying that he saw something on Netflix about ayahuasca. I watched a show about ayahuasca on Netflix, and a person who was on that show actually posted in a writing group that I was in and mentioned that she had written something for River Teeth. They have this section called Beautiful Things that features flash fiction. So flash nonfiction, 250 words or fewer. And I set a goal for myself to also submit something to them. So it was thanks to the ayahuasca episode that I wrote this piece, which will be appearing in River Teeth in December. It's called Developmental English. Julie's name is Adriana or Alessandra. I can't remember because she insists on Julie, more American. It's not that she doesn't love Colombia, but she worries that her real name will be too syllabic for American mouths. She wears hoop earrings and her light brown hair in a high pony. Professor, she says, why you look so fashionable today? You like magazines. Julie takes my developmental English class at the community college. Every student within a 3-desk radius of Julie cranes to hear her daily Q&A because she begins any conversation, even small talk, with a question. Immediately thereafter, she responds to herself with an answer, one that requires building a delicate mental bridge from one sentence to the next, like a haiku. Why is it so cold in this classroom? They want to kill us. How does Dow know so much about grammar? Professor, you love her. While giving feedback on her latest rough draft, I stop at a mysterious phrase. My heart was smooching. I asked Julie to explain. Do you know how scared I was? My heart, it was smooching. She thumps her palm against her chest. Ah, hammering, maybe. This word means kissing. It is kissing? She moans. I'm so bad. She runs her long acrylic nails up and down the thighs of her jeans as though scratching out an error. Do you like poems? I asked Julie. What is correct and what is beautiful are not always the same. And I'd like to read a poem that I wrote while at Woodlawn. I think dovetails with the flash piece. And this is called Maker. I want to give Adam back his rib. I'll make myself from something else. I'll give it a name of my own invention. There is power in names, in naming. I take pride in lording it over every house finch, house sparrow, song sparrow, nuthatch, and cowbird who pecks at my benevolent feeder. The whirlwind hostas, also called plantain lilies, line my yard, so I own them. But I had to Google their name. I resent these names, truth be told. Knowing them, saying them, it's not the same as calling them into existence. This is how poets are born. When I see a shadow flicker across the ground, absent a bird or a bee or even a leaf spiraling toward its own decomposition, what can I say? It, that, a gesture of the hand, a pronoun without an antecedent. When the heat is everywhere in my room, spreading itself damply on my neck and my pages, what is this called? I say close, like the temperature has breached my personal space, or close, like a door has been shut in my lungs. This is just a borrowed name. I'm impotent. I'm a ghost moving through someone else's conversation. I want to take out this rib and tell it, you are not a rib. You are a parabola, and I am the axis of symmetry. You are the path of orbit around my sun. You are not the boss of me. I see these words, the lines they have formed like rungs, and I climb to the top and look down upon what I have wrought. You are a poem. You. Thank you.
I loved those two pieces in complement with one another. Do I have words tonight? Yeah, that's what I meant to say. They complemented each other very well.
I'm so geeking a parabola. Okay.
Is my internet slow or is someone else? Or is your? Oh, I'm okay.
You're okay.
It's mine. I totally have it.
I love how you gave me so much shit.
I know, that's the first time it's ever.
We would like to now introduce Indigo Eriksen. All you, Indigo, take it away.
I'm Indigo. This is a great lineup. It's so fun to be with y'all. And just want to say, George, yes, thank you for killing that man. It's lovely to be here with y'all. And I just want to say thank you, Courtney and Rachel, for the inner loop. Y'all have just like been a space for my heart to smooch. So thank you. I was also a writer in residence at the place with on Pope Leahy House, and my goal was to start working on what I hope will be a book-length poem. So I'm thinking 1,000, oh my God, 100 pages. And I'm working on, so my family, you'll hear this in my poem, but they're Virginian and West Virginians, and it was always like we were too poor to own slaves, and we're descended from a Native American woman. And I was like, oh, that's convenient. And I feel like those two things kind of represent where white people want to be in America. They're like, we didn't have enslaved folk. I was like, well, maybe not, but you sure did benefit, didn't you? So let's talk about that. Anyway, and then like claiming this indigeneity without any idea about any of that. So, so I'm kind of interrogating that family story and then telling some other family stuff. And so being at the Woodlawn House was really, really fascinating. and talking to the historians there and being in this space. It was just, you know, very like deep and thick and rich and was great. And also, I forgot what I was going to say. There's another point. Oh yeah, so then I came out of the residency. My grandma's like, well, where's this poem? Where's this book you're writing? And I was like, Grandma, I appreciate your belief in me, but girl, I got 8 pages, okay? 8, sort of. And also like one night I was going into this genealogy. I'm related to Stonewall Jackson. I'm descended from his sister who was anti-slavery. And so I was trying to figure out like the grandmother of the who and trying to figure out this genealogy. So of course I called my research team, which are my grandma and my mom, and like sent a text to like figure this out. I was like, I need to know what's happening. And it became this debate. And it was really, I don't think they're here, but I love that my family, we're very different, but they're like, let me get the documents. And so we had this big, long, anyway, I was like, just for this one line, it like created this entire conversation. But first I'd like to read one of the poems I wrote for the house while I was there. And it was very strange because we were writers in residence, but while I was there, I don't know about the others, there were it's a museum with all this furniture and there's no one can come. So you're like sitting there and no one can come into the museum. So it's even more spooky. And then, you know, there's a lot going on, like it's on Indigenous land. There's a lot of history there. There's obviously like, it's made possible because of slavery, but then it was a place where free Black community was. And then where that was, the government came and took their farmland in World War I and World War II and made Fort Belvoir. And I was like, of course they did. So there's like a lot of stuff happening. So I wrote this poem called In this house about the space. In this house, there is furniture you will not touch, stories you will not hear, let alone remember and never tell. In this house, you become a shadow, just visible enough to be noticed when you are needed. In this house, you will bury its particular history when needlework falls out of favor and freedom is in vogue, but you are never in vogue. That's my first poem. And then next, I just want to read you a little bit of my my book in progress, my book-length poem. All right, so this is called Draft because it doesn't have a title. It's also called book-length poem, Family Stuff. So there you go. It's a little serious, but I'm like telling jokes. It's okay. Our family enslaved people. We did not own them as people cannot be owned. We enslaved them. Active word, verb, to enslave. To cause someone to lose their freedom of choice or action. Source, Oxford Languages Online. This is what I write. This is what I remember. Growing up, Mama told me we were too poor to have ever owned slaves. I took her at her word. She didn't know she lied. I wonder if this is what her mama told her. 3 years ago, we went back to visit the dilapidated school, small building, rotted shingles now, the family land. My mother and I gathered up stones in our shirts, which we used like aprons, so that I could take a piece of home back to the apartment. We stopped at a church made of stone by a man who once moved a mountain. And then a different church someone generations back built. We have fried chicken, even me, the vegetarian, and look at relics, family history, and the cemeteries. That was our purpose, to witness the graves and remember who we are, where we come from, even me, prodigal great-granddaughter, heir to a selective history. I often think of time travel and how I crave to know my grandmother before she was a mother, to see her in high school, those dreams of a medical degree, before she lost her own small fortune built on credit to pretty dresses at the department store. She majored in science, chose teaching, built houses out west. But first, she was a little girl and knobby knees in Appalachia. A photograph of my grandfather holding me. My hand reaches out. An orange tree. In a Mexican town on the water where I do not live, my family and I watch a documentary film called Arms for the Poor. My grandfather reads the closed captioning and then, loud in the way of a person not speaking, leaves. He built his life as an aeronautical engineer in the space race days and Cold War. His company also made bombs, landmines. I see shrapnel and the flayed edges of children. Later, I lay in crisp beach clean sheets and think. I find him in the kitchen. The rest of the house rests in the quiet hum of night while I say I'm sorry, and his arms make everything okay again. When everyone leaves on their airplanes and I go back to my mountain town on the border with Guatemala, I will wonder how I came to be, where the family line dropped in me, why this wild rage propels me further and further away. But many years later, while writing a poem, I will find him again. And as if by accident, he will tell us he left his first job because they made landmines and sent them to countries full of children. I didn't know that, my grandmother will say, as I remember that night in Oaxaca when I thought I had broken his love for me before I knew the word unconditional. And I will discover a line tethering me to him and he to me. This is not a genealogy. Do not believe any of this is true. When I leave Virginia, we all think it is forever. Not that I will return and live off a street named for a Confederate general to whom I am kin. On the other side of the family is a man who did enslave. There is no denying this. He also fought for fellow enslavers. When his gun ran empty and the guns of his men ran empty, he did not run. Famously, he stood. So too his men, like a stone wall. Here now, I wonder if a man is kind to the people he enslaves, is he a good man? And that's where I will pause. Thank you very much for listening to that work in progress.
Thanks so much, Indigo. Before my computer crashed, I was trying to say that you're the best literary citizen I know, always supportive of other writers. So thanks for being a part of the community. Okay, last in nonfiction, Chelsea Harrison. We've come full circle.
Hello. That was really, really powerful, Indigo. Thank you. That was really great lead in. The order got switched around a little bit, but I think that is perfect. My name is Chelsea D. Harrison, she, her, hers. I want to give some gratitudes really quickly. The first to the Inner Loop, to Woodlawn and Pope Leahy House for hosting the Writers-in-Residence for the summer. It's absolutely incredible, the opportunity that we had. So thank you, and thank you. And to the Nacotchtank and Anacostan people on whose land I stand in the city now known as Washington, D.C., I thank you as well for stewarding this land. So glad to be here tonight. My primary art form is theater and new theater making. So what you're going to hear is tidbits and snippets from a new play that's like worming its way through my imagination. So my primary goal for this residency was to visit the land, commune with it, listen for stories, and engage with my ancestors, enslaved, free, and indigenous in a whole new way. So my major takeaway was that there is a performance of social status in the antebellum South, and human bondage plays a major role in that performance. As labor, as backdrop, the enslaved were crucial to maintaining this illusion, this performance of power. And a quote from my blog post that I truly do believe is, I can safely say all the plantations a stage. Everyone from the first president of the country to the mistress, to the enslaved, to the overseer is playing a role in this production of a lifetime called America. All right, so the following scenes and stage directions, I'm going to be going kind of in and out of characters and like taking you through time, and we're going to do a little time travel and all that jazz. These are all sketches and moments in mind from something that is brewing called Woodlawn Vignettes. And the Woodlawn Vignettes, I would like to bring to life inside the historic house on these historic grounds, a living history tour, if you will. All right, so scene 2. The scene is set in a plantation manner 2 hours before dinner will be served. We get to see the grand spectacle of dinner time at the Woodlawn Plantation Mansion. Mistress Nellie rushes about, overseeing the prep of the food, the folding and laying of the linens, the polishing of the silverware, and the meticulous organization of the tea service set. The servants engage in a magnificent choreography of lifting, walking, folding, cooking, cutting, cleaning, straightening, dusting, sweeping, setting the table, setting the sideboard. Mistress Nellie speaks. You see, Negroes, y'all have a greater number of glands under the skin, so you can tend to have an offensive smell to you. To counterbalance this unfortunate side effect, I have included in my housekeeping book a recipe for chloride of soda. This concoction is for relieving persons affected by bad air from offensive servers, and a napkin moistened with chloride of soda placed under the nostrils and repeated restored several from apparent death. Mistress Nellie oversees the preparation of a homemade mixture to stop the servants from smelling while they serve. Nellie rushes off to her room to dress. As the servants put final touches on the dining room, Nellie returns dressed. Everyone is in costume. The bell chimes. There is absolute stillness in the room. Nellie gives a signal. The door opens and guests enter. The play begins. Fast forward through time. We're fast forwarding through time. We go to scene 3. Scene three is in the future. This is set a few generations later, and this scene is set in the garden of a free Black family residing in Freetown. Freetown was a free Black community in Fairfax County, Virginia, on the land of what used to be the Woodlawn Plantation. A young free Black girl dressed crisply in white stands amidst sunflowers with a book in her hand. She speaks. I started writing poetry because it makes me feel good. Sometimes when I'm standing here in the garden, I get the calling to versify. I wanted to share some of my verses with you. Free town of free Blacks, no longer enslaved, they soar, emancipated. The Manahoacs were forward-thinking farmers. They knew this land well. The Acaniches, the true first families here, the Saponis too. Freetown, my Freetown. Formerly enslaved, lived free. I know dreams come true. End of play.
Chelsea, you need to take a bow after that performance. The like inner theater nerd in me is just exploding with excitement. So thank you.
So great to get a new genre into the Woodlawn experience. Thank you so much, Chelsea. That was delightful.
That is all of our readers for the evening. I want to thank all of you again for being here. You're welcome to turn your mics on and do a round of applause for everyone. Thank you again to Cutter for kicking us off and being our feature. Thank you to all of our residents for pouring your hearts into your work this summer. Thank you to the newbies who showed up tonight. It was really fun to have some unfamiliar faces here as well. A lot of what several people were reading reminded me of this book that I'm reading right now, which is not by a local author, but it's A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived. And it does get into the genetics and genomics and the sciencey stuff, but it might be helpful for some of your research. So sharing that with you all. Also wanted to share that the Fall for the Book Festival is coming up in October, and there are lots of virtual events, I think there are some in person. Rachel and I will be moderating a panel on October 18th with Alyssa Washuta and Lily Danziger. So if anyone is interested, we'll be doing that. But there's lots of really cool events. I encourage you to check that out. Of course, stop by Powder's House, buy some books from our local writers, head over to the blog where you can read more from the residents.
I'm gonna jump in and say, everybody throw all your stuff into the chat, where we can find you, where we can get your books, if you want us to follow you, all that stuff. And we'll continue to kill time while you share information with each other via chat.
You can also like tag, if you use the socials, you can tag anything and we'll reshare it. We're happy to
If you're not following us on Instagram, we're very active at the Interloop Lit.
AKA Kira is amazing.
Hopefully neglected, but I'm guessing that all of ours are. Yeah, Kira keeps our Instagram account, let's say, updated, because Courtney and I are old. We're very old. You can't tell.
We're just realizing this.
In our 60s. Technologically.
You know, it's funny. I worked in communication for a long time, and I still have people who come to me and they're like, well, what do you advise for a social media strategy? And I'm like, I don't know anymore.
Refer you to this amazing person that you can hire freelance, Kiera Wolf. What you should say next time. But I was thinking, just what an amazing group we had at Woodlawn this year, and we all got together at the beginning, and normally the reading is a chance for the Woodlawn residents to rejoin and share stories and all this stuff, and I'm very sad that we weren't able to do that in person, but maybe we could plan a intimate outdoor event for you guys to all get back together and share your stories. And I just feel privileged to have heard the work that came out of that experience. So thank you so much for sharing. And thanks to Cutter for sharing your amazing work and getting me inspired about ayahuasca to never do it.
Getting us all wanting to vomit.
And with that, thank you everybody for coming, and don't let us take any up more of your time. We'll see you next month. Follow us on socials, visit our website. We love you all.
We really do.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.